Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Daniel, and if you're new here, you're welcome. Today's video might yet be my most unpopular opinion on the subject that's very sensitive, Nollywood. We're gonna help capture a bunch of things that has led us to a specific point that we are. Basically, it's almost an explainer of the industry from an insider's perspective. And before we go there, I'll be reading a couple of data that are actually specific to the industry that I may have to look away rather than have conversations with you. So permit me when you see my eyes go away. Now, let's get to some real interesting facts. Nollywood produces over 2,500 films annually that generate somewhere around $6.4 billion, right, in revenue. Now, this makes us one of the biggest movie industry in the African continent and a major contributor to the Nigerian economy, employing thousands, if not millions of jobs, right? However, this rapid growth was actually sprouted by a quantity-driven mindset, and this allowed us to be able to get so far, right? And led to so many events that got us to the point whereby two streaming giants, upon the promises of the hill of a growing economy backed up with population and numbers, Netflix and Prime, exited the building. So how did we get here? Cinema is a tool that allows us to travel and discover, right? Different worlds, serving as a unique medium of expression. It was invented in 1895 in France and subsequently made its way to Africa through colonialism. Majorly, it was used in Africa as a tool to actually spread the propaganda of the colonial personals who was supreme over us at the time. We actually had Africans painted in negative light. Every time a film was made, Africans was portrayed either as savages, cannibals, or actually as submissive figures. You can see this in several films that came out in that time. Tarzan of the Apes, King Kong, even some iterations of King Kong still maintain that narrative until I don't even know what the recent one looked like because I haven't seen that one. But there's also Voodoo Tiger and several others that actually also maintain that theme of colonialism and propaganda. This persisted up until 1960, whereby we gained our independence and the film industry began to take shape, or the entire economic space of filmmaking began to take shape because storytelling became a cultural expression. Now, something key very happened during the period of 1972 to 1977. The indigenization decree was passed that removed foreign personnel from key economical positions and was replaced by people of the land, which is Nigerian descent and Nigerian people. This localization was aimed at giving us our own sovereignty, have our own right to expression, and several other things. It had so much benefit, but was not without its challenges, right? And during that period, the amazing thing that could ever happen to Nigeria happened. We experienced an oil boom. During the oil boom, we moved from an agricultural-centric economy to a nation that actually spends oil dollar. Now, spending the oil dollar gave us excess income, and slowly we became the African giant due to this excess money we didn't know what to do with, right? And in that period, certain pioneers began to pop up like Herbert Ogunde and Ola Balogun that actually led the entire cinema movement from roadshows to theatrical performance and made several other films that actually happened during the period that was focused first as political statements, then gradually progressed into consumptional content that was like a feel-good situational movies that we became known with. And that actually progressed and led us into the era of video cassettes, where we had video rental clubs, and also VCDs eras where we have the Chike and Sons, Laba International Market, Idumota, Lagos. I don't know if you remember those rhymes and adverts that used to come out from all those, like the end parts of most of those movies back then, where they tell you where to get them from. And this was a period whereby we were strong. The economy was great. Nigeria was on a rise. Or was it? Well, we'll come back to that a bit. So the model capitalized on ease of distribution using either video cassettes or VCDs. During the tape eras, you had to go to video clubs to actually rent that, but obviously technologically stepped in and penetrated into the Nigerian nation better, and we had access to VCDs. Now, the VCD era was one of the most prolific era that was bombarded by piracy, whereby people who were not even the originators of the content could benefit because they had more effective duplication and distribution method, and they could mass produce your stories and became millionaires after the fact. There was a boom. But during this boom, right, we still had several challenges that actually was there, because there was like The skill gap as a storyteller, because we didn't have cohesion, we just had narrations. We had not yet mastered the storytelling language for the global upscale. Neither were there institutions nor educational platforms to be able to like coordinate those who were interested in storytelling. Those who went about it out of pure passions. Most of the time, there was a disconnect gap, because some of the creators never even got to benefit from the fruits of their labor due to piracy and the large fact that you could not even control how most of your stuff went, where it went, who it got sold to, how much of that revenue made its way back to you. So there was that disconnect, but the industry was still largely growing. Somehow you could get profit, and those profits that you got out of it somehow helped you to come back to the table again and give it a shot. Right? But at this end, the people who were at the piracy distribution end, they were leading the charge and they were winning. That now led us to the next era, which then came the film house, film one era, where we had like the cinema, because we were now trying to see how we can scale things, whereby movies were no longer available as CDs, they were now available as you have to go to the cinema to watch it, and you have to have different things. And that era became where we had the wedding party, we had like other amazing titles, but that era also met its challenges because we are now prone to the copycat challenge. And this was like in the form of when somebody released like a wedding film that was a blockbuster, everybody tried to make a wedding film that was a blockbuster. There was no more unique voices. There was now like maximizing return on investment. However it is, what is the reigning thing? What is the in thing? Is there a hot moving movie? What's the hot topic that everybody loves now? And that's how it went. And during that era, the chase for the return on investment, or ROI as it seems, suppressed the diversity of storytelling, suppressed unique voices, suppressed original ideas and intent. Now, even in that phase, right, we now had like a breakout or an offshoot. That's where we had like those who had access to some film education, or due to YouTube's penetration, acquired more knowledge, became the new Nollywood. And those who were like the OGs from the days of the 90s that was brought with discipline and pure passion, we are now regarded as the old Nollywoods, which you find that a major contribution of veterans were there. So there was like a slight disconnect between the old Nollywood and the new Nollywood, and there was several conversations of how do we marry both worlds and bring them together and maximize our outputs, whereby the new Nollywood that was doing new stuff and the old Nollywood that represent the past, they could all work in harmony and present Nollywood as a united front. Mind you, throughout this period, we had governing bodies like guilds for several sections, both the directors, cinematographers, and the actor sessions. But this guild had little to no control over the shape of the industry, enforcing laws and rules, and be able to like create a guided system to make us say we had like a professional industry. Despite we generated a lot of movies every year that put us somewhere on the top tier industries, among the top 3 industries as listed around the world, from Hollywood to Nollywood to Bollywood, we still didn't have like a cohesive front movement. Everybody was operating independently based on, I have an X amount of cash, I go there, I do what I have to do, I get it done, and I bolt out. Then came multiple challenges, right? Because in the midst of all this chaos, certain conversations started taking shape, because we had the numbers, a country that was ripe with over 200 million people. We had the means, spending power was up. When Nigeria is actually optimized, it could be a profitable business. With all those business cases that was said in said closed business room, finally, we had streaming giants entering into the table. They want a piece of the African pie. Netflix showed up, Amazon showed up. That was supposed to represent a huge penetration in the creative industry system, because these times, now the creator had access to funds, resources, and technology to be able to probably build their own infrastructure if they choose to, and actually maximize their game, which eliminated some of the challenges of the VCD era as the piracy, because whenever it is done, everybody gets to watch it. There was like a platform, millions could see your work, millions could appreciate you, because the essence of being a filmmaker is being able to share your passion and your stories with the world. You do not make it to be able to sit on your drive or show it to your grandma. You make things so that the world could actually see. The largest amount of audience should be able to experience your intent, which is like at the basic heart of every filmmaking decision. The average Nigerian could afford data, things were going on, and there came the biggest challenge we're actually going through. Now, despite all this climb that was happening that related till this time, something else was happening at the back. Our economy began to sink, began to take it up. So from like when the naira was more powerful than the pounds, right, we began to descend, and the pounds became more powerful than naira, and we went from like 100 naira to like over a decade we saw over 1,000% inflation that happened to the Nigerian currency, and led us from a place of where we had strength to a place where we had weaknesses. But we still kept chasing the same model of quantity over quality. The quantity model was great because we had the numbers, right? And we also had the currency power. So even when we made things that were subpar, the currency power compensated for us and made it a viable business model. But as time rolled over, without looking back, taking account and actually doing research, that same model was still kept being chased all throughout the entire decades that has actually come over a period of close to like 50 years. From 1960 till now. And that just kept happening, and we found ourselves in a place whereby even with the quantity model is no longer being able to optimize. Now, let's fast forward to what now happens when Netflix came, right? We met the challenge of producers having access to resources, but somehow the best of their greed took over, whereby rather than build infrastructure to be able to level up the playing and offer a more robust solution, we now started chasing the race for the bottom, which is who can do it from who can actually do it the fastest, which was the quantity over quality models. We're now on the race of who can do it the cheapest. Now, this played in various modes without naming names, so I don't get really kicked hard for actually these videos, but certain scenarios that if you actually do your research, you would find out who and how it happened, right? Started playing out. Scenarios, for example, where like an ex-producer says they require an X amount, maybe $1 million for their film, or 750K or 500K for a title they're able to get. The budget is listed, right? Rather than follow through in delivering on the budget of that film and maximizing all of those funds to be on screen, which in turn would help that producer have a bigger claim and have access to bigger access, right? We had cases whereby a typical producer could like half the budget or keep 70% for itself and only use 30% to run the entire. And even that 30%, right, they do price their crew according to global standards and say, okay, this is the standard which will pay them. But they come in-house, renegotiate that crew below local rates or somewhere at local rates, but yet actually demand world-class performance from those crew. During that period, we started seeing the things of producers bringing foreigners as DPs to be able to compensate, in quote, for skill gaps. This was not meant well to the entire production by moving the production by trying to increase the quality forward. It was almost like a rubber stamp that says, oh yes, it was a big name that shot it, so it should be better for it. Forgetting that these crews, when paid properly and paid well, hopefully they will take those funds and actually put it to invest in themselves, or you can actually now demand more for them because you've given them more to be able to invest in themselves in trainings, in educational materials, in going for residencies, in having international workshops, to even have shadow studies. You get some of these conversations. Netflix and Prime, I believe I am more aware of Netflix one, they did have certain closed sectional classes where they handpick certain people, because we do have great people that are actually amazing in the ecosystem, but we do not have them up to critical mass. You could probably count 10 great DPs in the entire Nigeria continent. Maybe there's more that I do not know, so please do not hold me that. If you know more DPs that are super amazing, you can leave them in the comments below. But before we go further, right, I have talked so much, right? If you think this is an interesting topic and it's making sense to you, please leave us a thumbs up. It's a very small channel. Help us get to 10K. Right, we will really use your and appreciate your help in getting. Smash the like button, share this video to a bunch of people that will need to know this, that has to be like an explainer for them. Share it so that we can get this word out and be able to like conquer the algorithm and help us grow. Now, that said, where did we stop? Netflix. Yes, they did perform certain introductions that was supposed to help writers, help cinematographers, but they're just one body. They could only reach a small percentage of the penetration. Now, rather than the producers actually being fair, because they also have the rooms to actually earn from most of their keep. So we saw several projects that had several budgets that we learned about, but they could not measure up to their international counterparts that could turn a dime that was like the diamond in the rough and became polished to become like amazing products, right? We saw that in several international projects that never actually happened with us. And this became a backfiring model that kept up across certain producers. And we also, most of the conversations that were led was, we can do it cheaper. Because when Netflix and Amazon came, they came with the mentality of bringing their own standards based on their own experience and wanting to like find out from industry, what is it that happens with you in your own industry and what's that? Rather than maintain that standard that would have given us the opportunity to grow, we led with the cap of, we can do it times 10 cheaper. We can do it times 10 faster. And all the results, this is not me speaking projectively. There are several movie titles, because I will not be listing them, so I'm not like targeting people or talking directly to producers. But if you look at the titles that were produced all on that region, none of them could measure up to the international community, even when we actually now finally got the Nigerian Oscar community selections. Now, this parried through with the race to the bottom that also now went into our own crew members who, because of lack of choice or lack of options, accepted whatever based on, let's just survive, let's just figure out a way to do it. There was no way to prioritize their own dignity, prioritize their own income, and be able to like take the conversation and take their craft with more passion by investing in themselves. And that also penetrated even up to the rental house. We can do it for cheap, we can do it for better. You could get crazy discounts. Forgetting that in the entire industry, there's something called an infrastructure. An infrastructure are systems that have been placed in place to be able to support the creativity. We have access to cameras like the Arri Alexa, the Red. These are amazing cameras. Time and time over has won Oscars, won awards, and has been able to prove themselves beyond reasonable doubt. But none of our films have been able to measure up, not because the technology is not there, but just because the personnel behind the technology, myself included, lack the required skills to be able to take all of that and take it to the next level. And all of this would have come if these producers, which were at the first front of the conversation, paid investment formulas into their teams, into their crews, and be able to develop a system that will ultimately set us up for success. But that habit trickled down to departmental heads, trickled down to the rental industry systems, that even now, the quality of tools that we have are beat up and burnt up, despite that we are actually at the top of our game. The rate of being able to replace and replenish those tools are no longer sustainable. We've reached a critical mass where everything is slowly grinding to a halt. Now, while that was going, on another arm, we had people who were selling their birthrights. And it makes me laugh and also makes it very sad, because I'll give you a case study. Avatar 2 was a clear case story that was built on the Sudanese conflict that was going on. This is a story Hollywood did not have the IP over, right? Hence they went the 3D route to be able to craft parallel narratives and be able to do an amazing blockbuster movie that has grossed over millions of dollars that the Sudanese people would never ever benefit from. In parallel, our producers took our original stories native to Africa, and sold it as originals. I'm not here to criticize who did the originals or who did not do the originals, but just know this is the implication of what you have done, that you have taken those stories which you would not have access. They have global rights, they could remix it into animations, they could repurpose it, they could do everything, and we and our generations that's yet to come after us will come and pay the reality that you thought you collected. Just for a bit of contrast, right? Most people who had original ideas that have actually sold out, right? Popular examples that are actually juicy to talk about. A lot of the Ring franchise was bought for a huge amount of money. Marvel bought the entire comic book line of Marvel was bought by Disney for over close to $4 billion. George Lucas sold Star Wars for billions of dollars. But our own originals are sold for $250,000, $250,000, $750,000. Imagine Things Fall Apart being sold for $200,000, all because that is our original story. We've sold our birthright, and our generations will come after and pay $3 million or $3 billion to be able to have the African experience that was supposed to be native to us. And this kept happening with the entire release of African originals. wrapped up in a very nice gift bubbles. They held their galas. It was a secluded invite only, and that's how it played out. Now, while all of this was going on, the economy was really taking a hit at this point in time, that the numbers were not adding up, that even your subscription that the companies of Netflix and Amazon could take in at a month before they could actually aggregate that currency and have the capital flight go back to their base, the worth of that currency has dropped because the economy sometimes within a 6 months window could drop by 100% again. So let's say in this month it was like $7.50 in a dollar, but within the next 6 month window you found out that you are somewhere playing around 1,000 naira to a dollar or 1,500 naira to $1, and that's like the situation you're dealing with. Now, to be fair, at this stage, it becomes unsustainable to any businessman. Now, during this period, right, we also have external factors that will actually try to penetrate the industry to help them. But some of these helps were just for the optics, because after you do them or you piggyback into them, you find out that there's no really show. But they use this in hindsight and statement and saying $1 billion was popped into the creative sector, or $1 billion was given to Africa's economy. All of this will happen. For example, 2 cases that is verifiable. Gearnest $1 billion fund. What came out of it that was supposed to be popped into the African movie industry department? They built a $3 million went to a Tunisian studio. They did some renovation for some stadiums. A short film was given to Ebony Life Academy from a $1 billion fund that should help the economy. Putting all of this together, you find out that some of these things are just hearsay and supposedly supposed to be rolled out. Right? There was also the BOI fund that came out that was supposed to, in quote, empower the entire industry. But that had a very interesting model that was very toxic. The industry gave money to rental houses to buy equipment. Whether they bought the equipment or not, now that's a different story that the rumors have very interesting things to say about, but we're not going to be dealing rumors. Now, the toxic part of that relationship was that when filmmakers got funds from the Bank of Industries, they were mandated to go rent equipment from those rental houses. Thereby, the filmmaker is the one now paying the rental house's loan structure, because you could not go out anywhere, even if you could get good deals or good rates. The entire concept was supposed to serve the industry in that the rental system becomes more robust, becomes more flexible, becomes more rich due to business competition and having like fair play happen in the game, right? While the filmmakers try to optimize their budget to make amazing films, right? The rental house also can support them with amazing equipment deals. But I was even part of, I'm saying this as a proof of fact because I was part of 2 of those projects that I could tell what was happening in the internal system, and it didn't fare good for them because even the rental house has rates that were not even the standard rates in the industry. So thereby, the filmmaker had to bear the load, and the rationale of success of things that actually benefited from that project was very slim. It was not a successful model that was executed. Fast forward, there was also a project, an impact project led by Illuminate that was billed at $575,000. But on the ground, the budget that was spent, this was like 2 years ago, the budget that was spent was less than $200,000 on impact storytelling. Now, I'm often speaking from fast because the listed public record stated that this was the grant that was given, right? And the budget that we saw on the pages of the production that it happened to was less than $200,000. These are things I can back with facts. You can ask for the receipt privately and you will get them. No joke. Now, we had other things that was happening also in this same space of angel investors help that was coming as foreign aids or foreign grants or even co-production opportunities, whereby certain productions came with certain clauses that they could have up to $500 to $1 million in terms of funds, but you have to like bring X amount of percentage of the crew from that side, right? And we just play like the supporting roles in terms of the production assistant or the minor roles, preventing, and they even come with most of the equipments too. Now, what that happens is, while the project may actually stand out and great, the funds never make it into the country nor help the creative sectors, because the equipment that comes in comes from external places, which means the money is going to be paid back into the country where it came from, which is not Nigeria, which is not the local vendors. The team that work on it will not benefit from it because most of the expertise are brought in, so the capital penetration will not get to happen at any point in time. Now, why that is also going on with the capital penetration not happening, you now find out that probably out of 100% of that budget, only 20 to 30% rather makes it back into the entire economy, and they will say, on the background. We spent $1 million in shooting this in Nigeria. It's actually an African story, marketed as such, marketed as made in Africa, but none of the impact actually gets into the African market. These were all case scenarios that are still ongoing. Now, this leads me to probably one of the last challenges in my long list of challenges that I've been talking about for over the past, God knows how long this video is now. We also had models from like the Afri-Exim banks who actually does mean well to be able to like do that, but we still lack the infrastructure to be able to funnel that money properly. So the Afri-Exim bank may not be able to loan money directly to creatives, right? Most times, some bold creatives actually go to them and they have certain conversations, but when the money is given out, the money goes to traditional banks. Traditional banks do not yet recognize IP, intellectual properties, because we do not have intellectual property insurance. So you cannot take your movie as an entity to say, okay, yes, this movie can be insured for, we have $1 million fund, right? And we're about to make this movie, so we can go to an insurance firm that says, for my project, you're insuring this $1 million project. Should it not be successful, you will be able to like cash in on the insurance to be able to fall back as a recoup plan and not become bad debt. Now, that became a problem because now for big organizations like that to do that, they actually go for prolific names. And most of the prolific names they reach out to collaborate with, most of them, they have been laced with a deep amount of greed that is beyond belief. So the original filmmakers who have the passion, the intent to be able to push those drives, they do not get to receive this penetration. They do not get to receive these handshakes or this outreach or these grants, but they just go for the biggest names. Who are the biggest names? Who will give us the largest optics? Who's the person that's most nice to say we're doing a collaboration with? But none of this actually leads to actual change. Another interesting scenario that popped up was the culture of celebrating mediocrity. There's a video from one of the Hollywood actors that's also Nigerian native, John Boyega, that actually extensively, you could call it this, but he was speaking honestly. We have these films, you hear us shouting about ourselves, the next best thing after Friday's Rice, but in honesty, does it really compete on the global stage? Have we really created masterpiece that the whole world can acknowledge and not us fanning the flame of mediocrity? We can stop fanning the flame of mediocrity. My brothers, my sisters, producers in general, African filmmakers. In fact, this is more related to Nigerians. We should stop fanning the flames and patting on the backs on stupid milestones that does not make sense that we did not achieve. When we break ground, let us celebrate it, but not make artificial noise just to be able to prove ourselves and make a decent point. Because the real work is when we're actually putting our blood, sweat, and our soul in making things come through. It's gonna connect, the whole world will notice. Until we break that ceiling, let's just keep looking up and not patting ourselves. Let's come together and see how we can stop celebrating mediocrity. Now, aggregate all of these challenges that I have summed up and have given up to you. Just the icing on the cake. The economy now tanked further, and all of these irregularizations, people spending money that they cannot defend, people producing stuff that are subpar, the entire creatives not being able to produce work until the level of capacity they're supposed to function as, led to a frustrating system, and the giants exit. Netflix left, Prime left. That happened, and here we are. How do we survive out of this mess? We have everybody now chasing down the bottom barrel of YouTube and saying that YouTube is the way forward. Guess what? It is not. Because YouTube also have a special algorithm that it will not pay you if your account is a Nigerian account the way to pay an American account. So yes, there's the logic to argue, there's self-distribution there's global audience, you have to create your audience, you have to create your shows. And to its point, there are certain shows that become successful based on they started on YouTube. Based on Insecure did it. The first season was on YouTube up until HBO picked it up and became something. Smart Money Women started on YouTube first before moving into Netflix when it came. But I don't know what happened to the season 2 though. That's not for me to discuss. But yeah, it's now back on YouTube, I think, or I do not know. You could check that and figure out the update for yourself. But yeah, those things have happened before. But it's not a sustainable financial model for what we call an industry. Now, after listing all of this problem, you ask yourself, what is the solution? Let's discuss solutions now. So first, we'll start by doing this. Can we be honest with ourselves, producers? Can we recognize that in the budget that you've been given, you have more than enough to be legitimately profitable? As a producer, your production company is entitled to 20 to 30% of the budget as your fee that you charge for being in charge of that production. If you now become the director of that project, you're entitled from anywhere from 10% of the total budget as your fee to 5%, depending on the scale of the budget. That is enough. That is enough. Take it and let the rest go into the production and push the envelope and push the conversation further than before. When you look at your crew, don't look at how you want to maximize the area. Look at how you want to invest in the team to be able to scale up and actually give you the chance that you seek to actually get to the billion-dollar point you are trying to chase. Let's start by doing that. Let's cover our grid. When you get to the rental house, pay the full price. Let it now get to the point that you have invested into the infrastructure, that those systems are there. They can actually now support you by giving you deals. Don't come and quote, in America you get deals, in China you get deals, in wherever you come from you get deals. They are systems that were built by people that are sustainable. What have you built here that you can call and say it is sustainable? You've never paid full price for anything. I understand in the earlier days of the 90s you were cheated based on piracy, and you're probably being cheated based on Telegram nowadays. So I'm not saying that you're not losing. I'm only saying to pave a way for a sustainable future, it starts by you doing the work. You and I have to do the work and actually put in all of this, because when you invest in people, these people they create systems. These systems become sustainable that they pass on to the next generation. It becomes a system of block upon block, not a thing of, it is my turn, now I will gut you as best as I can. Let's cop the greed. Pay it forward and invest in them. When you hear an asking price, try and be fair. Push it to the far of the limit of what you can afford and let it be transparent and grow from there. Not like you would never have budget. When you ask for a favor once. A favor is designed to be used once, not in every of your project. It's not favor in perpetuity. Now, to the next resolutions, we have to recognize that we are Africans in general, and this is like a global call to all my African brothers. Most transactions and infrastructures and systems does not come by governments building. It comes from one person from one continent reaching out to another person on another continent and say, hey, I would like to work with you. What can we do together? Let's start forming those Pan-African movement continental film. There's been a recent argument that has been going on in public news of late, whereby it has now been said that the African continent is larger than what is originally listed there, whereby even fitting in Europe, China, Russia, and other nations would still fit into Africa's landlocked mass, and there'll still be space for more. We are large. This is a call to my global fellow brothers out there. Let's reach out. Let's collaborate. Let's see how we can maximize effective storytelling within our own continent. There are billions of people on our own continent. If one story achieves 10% penetration, that filmmaker, he's set for life. We can build block upon block, sustainable systems within. We would not have to tell stories that are laced to other continental perspective. Let's start with our own people. They say change begins at home. Let it start from us. Now, to the private sector, you can also help. There are certain avenues for our telecom giants that has penetrated and has done so well. MTN, I'm talking to you. I'm sure you have something already going. Airtel, you can join the fray. Glo, grandmasters of data, you can join the fray. You can create local streaming platforms that would have penetrations across the continent using roaming technologies. You already have the infrastructure. The data is there, cellular service is there. It's just for you to create the apps that will be able, and you become like the next Netflix or the next aggregator. I'm not recommending this should go to like a film house group or a specific user. It has to be on a stage whereby it's a corporate government partnership, so that it is sustained and managed well for the sake of transparency. Because I do not know whether we've surpassed the stage of individual grids whereby one person can own a system and hopefully it actually works together. Yes, there are also places whereby people can come together, but if they still lead with the same minds of return on investment and not even having the capacity to be able to scale effectively, we still find ourselves in the same problem back to where we've started, and we'll still be left in this rut. With telecom giants like this, there's this tendency to be able to achieve maximum penetration. My film, your film can be in Gabon. Technology is moving that we can actually have more translations. Can we tell the African stories? that are native to us. We do not need to sell our birthright as original IPs. By sharing it to our brethren, it's going to connect with them because they have same unique experience like we do have. We don't have to muff it and now find what is the story, the global storytelling language. That was a tongue twister there. We do not have to do that. That is our third solution. Let's move a step further and say, how can we also improve on this? There is a place for the government, our government in our countries. Can you make the economy better? We are not asking for much. We're not asking for you to pump 2 billion into the system or no. Just improve the economy so that we have a fighting chance, a stronger spending power to be able to achieve more things. Our camera cost $100,000. Imagine if that was 100,000 naira that could afford us those tools and giving us the ability to be able to compete for the best classes, take residencies, fly out and don't become like cockroaches that is being chased with broom from every country corner because they are chasing us for bad behavior, they're chasing us for drug trafficking, they're chasing us for counterfeiting and all. Let's become the best of ourselves. It is possible, and it starts by the change coming from you and I. We are the ones who have to do this change ourselves. In addition, the government, what you can do, you can invest yearly and say, the same way the colonial masters used storytelling as propaganda, as tools to be able to brainwash us and make us see ourselves as cannibals, as savages, or divide us, why can't we have national storytelling that is done either by the Ministry of Art and Culture or something that says, what does it mean to be a true Nigerian? Stories that speaks to patriotism, that are not designed for profit. Stories that remind us of who we are. Stories that empower the next generation of what their identity is and is not derived from TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, which is now X, peer pressure, and whatever new narrative of whatever it is the world is peddling. We should invest in that. 5 titles a year by 5 visionary directors. Let there be an open competition. Foreign bodies, if you want to truly do the work, whether you want to give grants, please, this is a shameless plug. I am here, I will do the work, I will not steal your money. You would have the whatever. You would have all your accountability there. You don't have to always reach out for the big names and big clouds to be able to, once you've done the paparazzi, everything is done and you're like, okay, in 2019, we spent $1 million on the African film industry. Whereas by the time we go and really check from all that happened, you find that 20% of that did not really reach out to the grassroots. Try and see how you can achieve more penetration and how we can actually build a credible system that can work. To my family and friends in diaspora, you've been a help, you've been a supporting contribution. However you can facilitate in doing this, in doing more, in bringing up the education, in helping us move forward, in how we can become a sustainable force to be reckoned with, all is welcome. There are several organizations doing amazing. Light Camera Diaspora is one that I know of. Now, there are other organizations there that I do not know their names, but I salute you for doing all you can. Even Multi-Choice Talent Factory actually even does, because that's also a Pan-African organization that's actually doing talent registration in the entire space. These are some of the ways we can help, and that's how we get out of this mess if we choose to do well after the exit of Netflix and Amazon. Now, to close this video, in the spirit of hyping our own, here's a shameless plug. There's a guy called Gearnest NG. He makes Apple boxes. We do not manufacture things in Nigeria. He makes this. This is a useful tool instead. Please, it's called, I quote again, Gearnest NG. You can reach out to him on Instagram. If you're a filmmaker and you need one of these, go get it. Don't worry, he didn't pay me. I actually bought this with my money. We're speaking of supporting the African filmmaker. Let it start with us. Let's do things that actually make sense, that we can actually do. He makes wood. Wood is available here. Let's start with that. We empower him. Hopefully, he would not turn into something and now overcharge us, but he will do the work and get us out there. It's quite a very solid product. Until next time when I see you, this has been a lengthy conversation. Share this with somebody. Leave your comments on other suggestions that you think would work for the Nigerian film industry that I forgot to include in this video. Because it's so complex that it took me a while, and you can see me, I'm going through my notes to be able to sum all of this up until now. So yes, thank you for watching. My name is Daniel. Improvise, adapt, and overcome.